Imagine inheriting a beautiful ranch, like in the heart of Oregon,
Hmm.
um, a sprawling piece of land, filled with family history and the promise of a peaceful future. Now imagine that dream turning into a nightmare, a battleground where family ties are severed and greed fuels a conflict that ends in bloodshed. That's the chilling reality we're diving into today. The story of the Oregon Ranch, shooting a case where a family inheritance dispute escalated to a point of no return.
What's particularly intriguing about this case is how quickly things spiraled from simmering tensions to a fatal confrontation. We often think about inheritance disputes as drawn-out legal battles, but here, the situation erupted with shocking swiftness.
You're right, and that's what makes this deep dive so compelling. We're not just talking about property lines and legal documents. We're talking about raw emotions, desperate choices, and the devastating consequences of a family pushed to the brink. To understand how this tragedy unfolded, we need to start by meeting the key players. We have Kelly, the mother who found herself caught in the crossfire. Tucker, her daughter, now facing manslaughter charges. Shane, the uncle whose life was cut short, and Lori, the grandmother whose ranch became the battleground for this deadly feud.
Yes.
And then there's Ryan, the brother, who remained on the periphery of this tragic family drama.
It's crucial to understand that Kelly and Shane, both former lawyers, were facing their own financial struggles. Kelly and her three children were living with Lori in her Victorian house, relying heavily on their mother's dwindling resources. Shane, on the other hand, was living on the 60-acre ranch, but even that seemingly idyllic setting was marred by his unlicensed marijuana growing operation.
Wait, so Shane was running an illegal marijuana operation on the family ranch. That adds a whole other layer of complexity to the situation. Was this a source of conflict within the family?
Absolutely. While the details about the family's reaction to Shane's operation aren't explicitly stated in our sources, it's safe to assume that it created tension. This wasn't just about conflicting personalities, there were real financial stakes involved, made even more precarious by a significant reverse mortgage that Lori had taken out on the property.
Okay, so we have a family struggling financially, an illegal operation adding to the stress, and then a reverse mortgage on top of it all. It sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Precisely. The reverse mortgage, in particular, is a crucial detail. It essentially meant that the value of the ranch, their potential inheritance, was diminishing with each passing day. This financial pressure cooker likely amplified existing tensions, particularly between Kelly and Shane.
I can see how that would create a sense of urgency, almost desperation for both of them. They're essentially watching their potential inheritance shrink right before their eyes.
Exactly. Kelly, in particular, was likely worried about her future and the future of her children. Imagine the pressure of knowing that your mother's declining wealth is your only safety net, and that safety net is being eroded by this reverse mortgage and potentially jeopardized by Shane's activities.
So it wasn't just a matter of who gets what. It was about survival, about securing a future for themselves and their children.
You hit the nail on the head. And this financial pressure, combined with long-standing family dynamics, created a powder keg ready to explode.
And the spark that ignited this powder keg seems to have been a physical altercation between Shane and Tucker, which ultimately led to a restraining order.
Yes, this incident marked a significant escalation in the conflict. While the sources don't provide specific details about the altercation, the fact that it resulted in a restraining order suggests a level of violence that cannot be ignored.
It's chilling to think about how quickly things escalated from financial anxieties to physical violence. And this incident seems to have had a profound impact on Kelly. There's a note in the court documents that mentions Kelly's intention to disinherit Shane if anything happened to her family.
That's a crucial detail because it reveals the depth of Kelly's fear and distrust. She wasn't just worried about losing the ranch, she genuinely believed that Shane posed a threat to her and her children's safety.
So we have a family on edge, financial anxieties fueling resentment, and a history of physical violence. It's a volatile mix, to say the least. And this is where the story takes an even darker turn with the introduction of a grant deed and a notary named Carla.
The grant deed is essentially a legal document that transfers ownership of a property. In this case, Shane wanted Lori to sign a grant deed, but the details of what exactly this deed entailed and his motivations for wanting it signed are somewhat murky.
Okay, so we have this grant deed, and Shane is eager to get his mother to sign it. Kelly is suspicious, right? She believes Shane is trying to manipulate Lori to secure a larger portion of the inheritance.
That's right. Kelly believed Shane was trying to take advantage of Lori's vulnerability, potentially even coercing her into signing something against her will. She saw this grant deed as a direct threat to her and her children's future.
And this is where Carla, the notary, enters the picture. She was hired by Shane to witness the signing of the grant deed, but she had no idea what she was walking into.
Carla's perspective is fascinating because she provides an outsider's view of this already fractured family. She arrives at the ranch with the intention of simply fulfilling her professional duty, completely unaware of the simmering tensions and the high stakes involved.
And she quickly realizes that something is off, right? She describes the atmosphere as incredibly tense, almost palpable.
Yes, Carla sensed the underlying hostility between Kelly and Shane. She noticed Kelly's anxiety, Shane's insistence, and Lori's seeming reluctance. It was clear to her that this wasn't a simple legal transaction, it was a family drama unfolding before her eyes.
And this sense of unease only intensifies when Shane arrives at the ranch.
Right. Carla describes his demeanor as agitated, almost frantic. He seemed desperate to get Lori to sign the grant deed, and his urgency only fueled Kelly's suspicions.
So we have all these simmering tensions, distrust, and anxieties coming to a head in this one moment with Carla caught in the middle. It's like a pressure cooker about to explode.
And explode it did.
Ah.
But to understand how and why, we need to delve into the events that transpired next.
Welcome back. Last time we left off with Carla, the unsuspecting notary, arriving at the Oregon ranch. Sensing the palpable tension between Kelly and Shane, she was about to witness a family feud erupt in the most tragic way imaginable.
Carla's testimony paints a vivid picture of what happened next. She described Kelly's reaction to the grant deed as explosive feud. Kelly believed Shane was trying to swindle their mother out of her rightful inheritance.
Wait, so Kelly thought the grant deed was some kind of underhanded maneuver by Shane. Did the sources shed any light on what Shane was really after?
It's unclear from the documents whether Shane intended to deceive his mother or if he genuinely believed the grant deed was in her best interest. However, Kelly's fear was palpable. According to Carla, Kelly tore up the grant deed in a fit of rage, escalating the situation dramatically.
That's an incredibly powerful image, Kelly destroying that legal document, essentially declaring war against her brother. But where was Shane during all of this?
Carla stated that Shane was outside the house during this confrontation. He hadn't yet entered the room where Kelly, Lori, and Carla were gathered. This detail becomes crucial later on, when we examine the conflicting accounts of the shooting itself.
Okay, so we have Kelly furious, tearing up the grant deed, Shane outside the house, and Carla witnessing this whole family drama unfold. This is where things get really confusing, right? Because there are conflicting accounts of what happened next, particularly regarding Shane's actions and whether he was trying to force his way into the house when the shooting occurred.
Exactly. This is where the case becomes a puzzle, with pieces that seem to both fit and contradict each other. Kelly and Tucker claim that Shane, enraged by the destruction of the grant deed, barged into the house and threatened them, leading Tucker to grab a gun and shoot him in self-defense.
But Carla's account tells a different story, right?
Yes, Carla, who fled the scene immediately after the shooting, told investigators that she did not see Shane attempting to force his way into the house. She recalls hearing a gunshot, followed by Shane yelling, "You shot me." This detail suggests that Shane was shot while he was outside, not while actively trying to break in.
So we have two very different versions of events. On one hand, we have Kelly and Tucker claiming self-defense, stating that Shane was a threat. On the other hand, we have Carla's testimony, which contradicts their account of Shane's actions in those crucial moments.
And this is where those police interviews we mentioned earlier become so important. The detectives were trying to piece together the truth by scrutinizing the details, the inconsistencies, and the motivations of everyone involved.
What did those interviews reveal? Did they shed any light on who was telling the truth?
The interviews, while insightful, only added more layers to this complex case. For example, during Kelly's interview, she repeatedly emphasized her lack of financial resources, claiming to be on the verge of needing food stamps. However, detectives quickly discovered that she managed to secure a substantial amount of money for Tucker's bail.
That does seem strange.
Oh.
If she was truly struggling financially, where did she get the money to bail out her daughter? Was she exaggerating her financial hardship to gain sympathy and support for a self-defense claim? Or was there another source of money that she didn't disclose to the authorities?
Those are precisely the questions that investigators were grappling with. And when they interviewed Tucker, they encountered further inconsistencies. She claimed to have been terrified of Shane, stating that he had repeatedly threatened her over the phone. But detectives found no evidence to corroborate these phone calls, no records, no voicemails, nothing.
So was Tucker exaggerating Shane's threats to justify her actions? Or did she genuinely believe he was a danger to her and her family, even if there was no concrete proof? It's almost impossible to separate fact from fiction in this tangled web of accusations and justifications.
Remember, this was a family entangled in a bitter inheritance dispute fueled by financial anxieties, long-standing resentments. And let's not forget Shane's illegal marijuana operation. It's a situation where perceptions are easily distorted and the truth becomes elusive.
This raises a question. How did the investigators handle these inconsistencies and the lack of concrete evidence? Did they believe Kelly and Tucker's story of self-defense? Or did they see through the facade and suspect something more sinister?
The detectives, despite the inconsistencies in Kelly and Tucker's statements, were inclined to believe that Shane had been aggressive towards Tucker in the past, especially given the restraining order and evidence of a previous assault. However, Carla's testimony cast doubt on whether Shane was actually trying to break into the house at the moment of the shooting.
It sounds like the investigators were facing a real dilemma. They had evidence suggesting Shane had been violent towards Tucker in the past, but they also had a witness whose account contradicted the claim that he was posing an immediate threat when Tucker shot him.
You've hit the nail on the head. The case was complex, messy, and full of contradictions, but despite the inconsistencies and the lack of a clear-cut narrative, the district attorney ultimately decided to charge Tucker with manslaughter.
So despite the possibility of self-defense, the fact that Shane was shot outside the house, coupled with Carla's testimony, raised enough doubt for the district attorney to pursue charges against Tucker.
That's exactly right. It seemed like the legal system was finally going to bring some semblance of justice to this tragic situation. But then, just as the case was moving forward, another unexpected twist occurred. Tucker disappeared.
Wait, she disappeared. If they're posting bail.
Yes. Tucker vanished without a trace. Leaving behind the legal battle, the family drama, and the weight of her actions, she assumed a new identity win and started a new life, far removed from the tragedy that had unfolded on that Oregon ranch.
This is a shocking development. What could have prompted her to take such drastic measures? Was she fleeing guilt, fear of prosecution? Or was she simply trying to escape the unbearable weight of her family's toxic legacy?
These are questions that linger, even as we delve deeper into the aftermath of the shooting and the lasting repercussions of this tragic event.
So we're back, and if you thought the first two parts of this deep dive were intense, well, buckle up, because the fallout from this Oregon ranch shooting is just as tangled and heartbreaking as the events that led to it. We left off with Tucker, the daughter accused of manslaughter, vanishing into thin air, taking on a new identity win.
It's a stunning turn of events, isn't it? And it leaves us grappling with so many questions. Did she truly believe she was in danger? Was this a calculated escape from justice? Or was it a desperate attempt to outrun the ghosts of her past?
It's hard to fathom what must have been going through her mind. But one thing's for sure, her disappearance threw a massive wrench into the legal proceedings.
Absolutely. Without Tucker's testimony, the prosecution's case against her crumbled. They could no longer definitively prove that the shooting wasn't an act of self-defense, especially with the lingering questions about Shane's aggressive behavior in the past.
So with Tucker gone and the case weakened, what happened? Did the legal system just give up?
Not exactly. They pursued every avenue, but ultimately the manslaughter charges against Tucker were dropped due to insufficient evidence. It became a legal stalemate, a case that couldn't be definitively proven one way or the other.
That must have been incredibly frustrating for everyone involved.
Yeah.
No clear answers, no sense of closure, just a lingering cloud of uncertainty and pain.
Precisely. And this is where the case transcends the purely legal realm and delves into the messy, complicated world of human emotions. We're talking about a family ripped apart, a community grappling with the loss of life, and a web of unresolved issues surrounding the inheritance of that now infamous ranch.
It makes you think about the ripple effects of this tragedy. What happened to Lori, the grandmother, who witnessed this horrific event unfold in her own home? And what about Ryan, the brother who tried to stay out of the family drama but now finds himself caught in the wreckage?
You can only speculate, but it's safe to assume that they're all grappling with immense grief, confusion, and possibly even guilt. Imagine trying to pick up the pieces of your life after such a traumatic experience. The financial anxieties, the legal battles, and the constant media scrutiny. It's a heavy burden to bear.
And let's not forget the psychological toll.
Yeah.
How do you come to terms with the fact that your family was torn apart by greed, resentment, and violence?
It's a wound that may never fully heal. And that brings us back to Tucker, the woman who vanished. Is she haunted by what happened that day? Does she regret her actions?
Or maybe she found a way to compartmentalize, to create a new life for herself, free from the weight of her past. We see hints of that in her newfound interest in filmmaking, her attempt to craft new narratives, new realities.
It's a fascinating psychological puzzle, isn't it? Does this new identity win represent a genuine attempt at redemption, a desire to rewrite her story? Or is it simply a way to escape accountability?
We may never know for sure, but her disappearance serves as a stark reminder of the complexities of human nature, our capacity for both good and evil, and the enduring power of secrets and second chances.
This case, as we've seen, is about so much more than just a shooting. It's a cautionary tale about the destructive nature of greed, the fragility of family bonds, and the unintended consequences of actions taken in the heat of the moment.
It's a story that lingers long after the legal battles have ended, prompting us to reflect on our own families, our own values, and the choices we make when faced with conflict and hardship.
If there's one takeaway from this deep dive, it's this: open communication, empathy, and a willingness to seek professional help are essential when navigating family disputes, especially those involving inheritance. Because as we've seen, the price of silence, resentment, and unresolved conflict can be devastatingly high.
It's a sobering thought, but an important one. And for anyone listening who might be dealing with similar family tensions, I hope this story serves as a wake-up call. Reach out to your loved ones, seek mediation, find a way to bridge the divides before they become irreparable.
You're absolutely right, because sometimes the greatest inheritance we can leave behind is not a piece of property or a sum of money, but a legacy of love, understanding, and forgiveness within our own families.
And that's a powerful note to end on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the complexities of the Oregon Ranch shooting. We hope it's prompted you to reflect on the power of family, the importance of communication, and the fragility of human connection. If you have any thoughts or experiences you'd like to share, we encourage you to leave a comment below. And for more explorations into the human condition and the stories that shape our world, be sure to subscribe to The Deep Dive.